In October 1492, Christopher Columbus reached the New World, sailing on 3 ships. After discovering the Caribbean, he confidently believed that this was not a separate continent but rather a route to Asia. As a result of this misconception, America came to be called the West Indies, and the indigenous population was termed Indians. He had to contend with adverse weather, and his primary ship was wrecked, which could have spelled the end of the entire journey into uncharted waters. What would have been the historical implications had Columbus disappeared in the Atlantic? 1. Another explorer would have discovered America. Long before Columbus, around the 10th century, according to proven records, Vikings led by Leif Erikson landed in North America. This means the New World was discovered nearly 5 centuries earlier, though this was not documented. Even if Columbus hadn't reached America, there were other explorers, such as Amerigo Vespucci, who discovered the Amazon Delta and explored a large portion of South America's coast in 1499. However, that expedition was a consequence of Christopher Columbus's journey and might not have taken place if he hadn't reached the Caribbean. In 1500, the Portuguese explorer Pedro Álvares Cabral, deviating from his course much like Columbus, arrived at the Brazilian coast and claimed the territory for Portugal. If a Portuguese had been the first to discover the New World, it would have profoundly altered the course of history. 2. Portugal would have become the wealthiest empire. The Spanish discovery of America provided them with endless streams of gold, and the ability to transport goods via trade routes known only to them. If Columbus hadn't reached America, Pedro Cabral would have, allowing Portugal to establish a colonization monopoly, seeking and most likely obtaining the Pope's permission to claim all lands discovered by the nation's explorers, as history shows was the case with Spain. While the Treaty of Tordesillas did give Portugal a significant amount of prosperous land, it paled in comparison to Spain's territories. Being almost the sole proprietor of the New World, Portugal would have dominated all European trade and gained vast gold reserves from South America. 3. The Aztecs and Maya would continue to grow. By the time the Spanish arrived in Central America, there were 2 roughly equally powerful empires in the region, the Aztecs and the Maya, along with a few weaker states. In 1519, Hernán Cortés allied with the Tlaxcalans and overthrew the Aztec Empire. Without the support of the Tlaxcalans, and without the more advanced military technologies of the conquistadors, none of them could have defeated the Aztecs on their own. However, if Columbus had not discovered America, there would have been no expedition by Cortés, and it's likely that the militant Aztec Empire would have conquered neighboring states, gaining access to their human resources and gold. After that, the Aztecs would have expanded north, conquering the territory of modern-day Mexico, where they would not have encountered significant resistance. 4. The Incor Empire would have grown even larger. Compared to the size and power of the Incor Empire at its peak in the 15th century, the Aztecs and the Maya were akin to modern countries of South and Central America when contrasted with the USA. The Spanish conquistadors led by Francisco Pizarro managed to destroy the empire using modern weaponry and diseases that the invaders brought with them. However, had the conquistadors not followed in the wake of Columbus's expedition, the Incor Empire would have continued its expansion, conquering some states and forming alliances with others. By the time the Portuguese, more focused on trade than conquest, would have reached the Incor Empire, it might have doubled in size or even more, far surpassing Portugal in both landmass and population. This would have made the conquest of these territories, even considering firearms, a very challenging and unprofitable endeavor. 5. China would have become the dominant power in Southeast Asia. In the 15th century, during the active conquest of America, the Ming dynasty, which ruled in China, sent expeditions throughout Asia. However, these were quickly halted after explorers found nothing in the nearby waters but uncivilized natives. Following this, the dynasty effectively locked China away, adopting a policy of isolationism, especially from the encroaching European colonizers whose bases were drawing ever closer to the Middle Kingdom's borders. Thanks to the wealth from colonies in America, the Spanish and Portuguese were able to organize numerous expeditions, including to Southeast Asia, where the East India trading companies began to emerge, and where conquistadors later established a presence. Without American colonies, Europeans would hardly have been able to penetrate the Chinese market. Moreover, there would have been neither Macau nor other European colonies in China that served as trading posts, and facilitated the import of rare goods into Europe. China would have been able to impose favorable terms on the Europeans and would quickly have become the richest power in the region, if not the entire world. 6. There would be different countries in North America with a large indigenous population. The indigenous tribes of North America didn't have a concept of a state as envisioned by the Europeans. Even when tribes united, they formed confederations, like the Iroquois, which consisted of 6 separate tribes. Typically, confederations were established to counter a more potent adversary. The Spanish invasion of North America led to a catastrophe, resulting in the eradication or extinction of several million Native Americans. There are various estimates of the initial indigenous population and the remnants post-colonization. Researchers' numbers range from 6 to 112 million people, averaging around 46 million pre-conquest and 50 to 90% less afterward. Without the massive population decline due to the deliberate genocidal policies of the Spanish, and later the British colonists, coupled with the introduction of European diseases to the continent and the harsh exploitation of economically valuable inhabitants, the North American tribes would continue to expand both in population and territorially. By the time the military contingents of European nations arrived on the continent, Native Americans could have united into several large and powerful confederations, capable of resisting even the more technologically advanced invaders. 7. The Ottoman Empire would have conquered Europe. In the 15th century, after the conquest of Byzantium and the Balkans, the Ottomans advanced northward, laying siege to the capitals of Hungary, Austria, and other countries. However, all their attempts at conquest were thwarted, as Austria was allied with Spain. Thanks to the gold from the New World, Spain could afford a prolonged war and massive expenditures on its army and navy without straining its economy. But if Columbus hadn't discovered America, or if, for instance, a Portuguese explorer had, Spain wouldn't have dominated European seas since it wouldn't have had the means to maintain a powerful fleet. As a result, the Ottoman navy would have faced little resistance in the Mediterranean, and their army wouldn't have been halted in southern Europe. This would have allowed the Turks to easily capture Vienna first, followed by Krakow and the capitals of other states that were part of the anti-Ottoman coalition. 8. In North America, people would speak French or Dutch. From the onset of the colonization of North America, several countries, Spain, Great Britain, France, and the Netherlands, were in competition on the continent. The Netherlands quickly withdrew from this contest, leaving the others to battle for the colonies. Without Columbus, Spain wouldn't have dominated both Americas. With no strong adversary like Spain, the French and the Dutch could have swiftly colonized much of the eastern seaboard. Upon gaining independence, the country occupying the territory of the modern-day USA might have resembled Canada, with French and English or French and Dutch being the dominant languages. 9. The Russian Empire would have become one of the wealthiest powers. The discovery of America facilitated the establishment of new trade routes and the transport of goods via shorter routes across the Atlantic. However, had Columbus not discovered it, the trade of other European nations with Russia would have only increased. Indeed, this would have been longer than by sea, but considering the rising power of the Ottoman Empire and the lack of a Spanish naval fleet that could patrol the African coastal waters, the main trade route would have passed through the Russian Empire to China and back. This would have funneled such a significant flow of money into Russia's treasury that it would quickly surpass any other European country in technological and industrial potential. 10. Great Britain would have been a backwater of Europe. Great Britain achieved its dominant position in Europe's economy thanks to its colonies, with North American land serving as the foundation for this wealth. For a long time, Great Britain was hesitant to engage in the colonial race, and only after the successes of Spain, Portugal, France, and the Netherlands did it decide to establish its own outposts in North America. The experience Great Britain gained in America helped it conquer India and other countries, bringing it immense riches. However, without Columbus, there wouldn't have been such active colonization of America, at least, not in the 15th century. Considering that most of the North American territories would have been claimed by the French and Dutch, the British would have been left with scraps. By the 18th century, when the Industrial Revolution began, Great Britain would have been an insular nation, only marginally wealthier than other European countries. The vast coal reserves, essential for industrialization, would have made the conquest of the British Isles a priority for many countries, and foremost among them, its long-standing enemy, France.